Haere atu rā e nei kupu whakamiha, e nei kupu whakamānoa kia koutou katoa huri āmio I te motu. Riri ana a mati here hei ho haere mō mihi kia koutou, ko waihape mai rā ki tā tātou kaupapa ko mihi ngā rangi ahau. Māku koutou e arahi ki roto I ngā kaupapa o te wā, I te pai o Party People. Welcome to Party People, funded through the Public Interest Journalism Fund. It's Wednesday, the 20th of April, and Aotearoa is now 1 week into the orange traffic light setting. Joining me today in the amber glow are the noble savages of New Zealand commentary, Shane Te Pou and Tau Henare tēnā kōrua. Has life changed much for you in the orange?
No, not really. I was orange anyway, and that's how I treated it. And I think a lot of people did treat it like an orange when they were red, and when it went into orange, yada yada yada, people were just normal.
Yeah.
And so I think New Zealand is normal now.
You still wearing masks?
Yeah, I am actually. I hop out of my truck and then go back to my truck to put my mask on when I go to the dairy.
Yep.
Countdown. I mean, I don't go anywhere other than to the dairy and countdown.
Golf.
Maybe golf.
Golf, yes. And you've just come back from
Yeah.
the Waiponamu.
Yeah.
How are they treating it?
Oh no, everyone was very compliant. The airline still, of course, masks, people wearing masks. I think people were happy to be out and about, and I went to Queenstown, Tahuna, and
You did a bit of tourism?
did a little bit of tourism. It infuriates me when you go on a historical tour and there's nothing about the hapu or the iwi, which I think misses, not only from a sort of an ideological sort of perspective, misses the boat, part of the pun, but I reckon, and I like going overseas, one of the reasons I like going overseas is to learning the all of that country's history, and I think we ought to do more of that.
You feel like that our tourists might be getting robbed of the
they
deeper
are.
story?
I think they are, and Queenstown is beautiful, but those that have travelled, there are lots of beautiful places. But what is unique about Aotearoa New Zealand is our culture and our indigenous history.
So Te Taitokirau, famous for the beaches, as we know, but not doing so well in the vaccination rates. In fact, 5 to 11-year-old Tamariki are the lowest vaccinated group in Aotearoa. So just 2/3 are yet to get the vaccination, and just 5% have 2 doses. What do you think's behind this rate?
I think the north is a hotbed of protest, of anti-government. Doesn't matter who the government is.
Yeah.
They're very staunch in their own skins, and woe betide anybody who walks in there and tells them what to do. So they just don't like it.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering where the 40 mil that Māori got to vaccinate people went.
Yeah, well, 5 million of it was spent by the DHB in misinformation campaigns, and we all know Pat Newman, who's the chair of the Taitokirau Principals Association. He says, even though schools want to get vaccinators in, they're kind of saying no, they're not going to, because with the vaccinators comes really angry parents. It's a bit of a difficult one to manage.
It is difficult, and often what is the case in areas where you have that sort of issue, well, it's the local hauora, or in Auckland, it'll be Wharewatia or Waipareira Trust, and particularly in Whangarei, they don't really have those entities. And also where you've got settlements, you've got strong sort of social infrastructures that are funded through those settlements. I think there's that issue. And to Taitokirau, but Toa's right, there is a deep mistrust, for good reason often, of fundamentally what are Pākehā institutions.
Do you think if they had a Waipareira Trust or a whānau ora like they do here, that they'd have more cut through?
Te got Ngāti Hine Hauora. Nearly every other area in the north has got a hauora being run by hapu and iwi. Here's the thing: when it's not compulsory. That means you can say no, and a whole lot of people in the north have said no, and that's the north. We just got to live with it. You can't force people to take the jab. I mean, I know a personal experience that a whole group of let's say 30 people, 1 or 2 say no, and that's life. You got to get on with it.
Yeah. So let's staying on Tamariki. Minister Davis has announced the new chair of Oranga Tamariki's advisory board, and it is, drumroll, Mark Solomon. So you might remember, following a series of damning reports, the minister announced a review, a shake-up of OT, and that they brought on Wiri Gardner last year, and he was going to raise cultural competency inside the organisation and develop those partnerships with iwi that weren't really progressing. The internal report was released this year, beginning of this year, and found a series of failures. But rather than the independent Māori Tamariki authority that people had wanted, Minister Davies established the Oranga Tamariki board. What thoughts about Mark Solomon? Will he give it a good go?
Oh no, he's a good pair of hands. I mean, look at where Ngaitahu is. So I don't think you can diss on him in terms of where he's led the iwi. This is different though, and I worry about what we are getting. What are we getting? Are we getting an organisation that is going to have a little bit of a tutu around the edges and nothing transformational about Oranga Tamariki? Because I thought it was. I thought it was supposed to be. And I'm worried that it's not going to be.
Your thoughts? Because, we were promised a reform. They were going to reform Oranga Tamariki.
Well, the signs are positive. I certainly do trust to Mark Solomon's strong yet stable hand. The signs are promising. Uplifts are down. That's a fact. There have been some good contracts signed with, for instance, my own iwi with Tuoi, where basically in our rohe we have responsibility for Māori kids. It's not Tamariki, or we have that responsibility. So I think there are some positive signs. And let's just remember, there's only one CEO, there's only one chair. There's not a Pākehā equivalent when it comes to Oranga Tamariki. So yeah, we're on the right road. But
do you think the framework's right though?
Do
you think the framework's right, having an advisory board that sits, outside of the organisation?
In 2022, I'm always concerned about advisory boards. But here's the thing, advice, you can take it or you don't. And I think that Calvin is driving it as hard as he can, but what happens if he's no longer the minister? So what you've got to have constructs that live beyond the people of the time.
That is a really good point. If you were going to give some magic powers to that authority, advisory board, what would you give them?
Oh, thanks for the question. I'm not sure. I'm honestly not sure. Do you take their ability away from uplifting children? Because at the end of the day, children are its focus. Yes. So the protection and the health of children is the number one priority. I mean, look, there are so many reports right back from Rangihau to now. Surely, to goodness, there's an answer in all of those reports since Rangihau's. We're just going to move now to the police minister. She's been under fire this week by the opposition. They're calling for her to stand down after a series of ram raids and allegations around gang numbers, and now a new police shooting means there's a lot on her plate. What's your take? Well,
again, look at a few facts. Crime in Aotearoa New Zealand, by and large, has been stagnant. It hasn't risen, hasn't gone down. So, but I can see when there's high-profile issues like the ram raids and shootings, the connections with the 501s, that the opposition makes a meal of it. I don't think that the minister herself has been as agile on her feet and has been able to answer some of the criticism that a seasoned politicians should be able to do. I think she's been in Parliament 10 years plus now. Yeah, and I think that just from a purely performance perspective, the Prime Minister will be worried and maybe looking at others on the Cabinet table.
What does a Prime Minister do when one of your ministers is under fire like this?
Well, with the police portfolio, it's a huge and a very, very difficult gig to get your hands around. You've got to look as though you know what you're talking about. You've got to look as though you're strong. You got to look as though you're on the side of the police officer. All of those things, and I don't think Poto has been. And it's not because she's weak or anything, it's just that she just hasn't had the game time. Let's not forget the former ministers of police, Judith Collins, for example.
Yeah, Paula
Crusher.
Judith. Collins, Stuart Nash.
They all had a bit of a hands-on approach this time, and I feel sorry for it, because you can't blame any of the crime that is going on the Minister of Police.
I realise that, but so, you know, if you need all of those things to be the police minister, why would they pick her?
I'm not sure why they picked her, and I'm pretty sure that there are better options than her in the cabinet. And I'm still aghast that Stuart Nash is not the Minister of Police. He was a good set of hands on a very, very hard portfolio. This is not one of your kumbaya sort of violin portfolios. This is real people's lives. In the dairies that are being broken into, people being shot by the police, all of those sorts of things. And so you need a person who is well grounded.
And let's remember, a lot of this crime is committed in working class areas, high Māori density, high Pacifica density. So they'll be getting tired of that. And
can you change? Would a prime minister change a police minister mid-cycle?
Oh, I think what she might do is that she might use it as an excuse quickly after the budget to have a reasonably decent wholesale change, 5 or 6 MPs, because it's time to do the shuffle.
And this is the time for a government to actually start looking at succession programs. Who's in, who's out, how far out, are we looking at 2 years, 3 years, 4 years?
Do you think the police portfolio is going to be one that's going to be focal with the opposition calling for be tougher on gangs? And Mitchell from, he's actually very good and
opposition MP, and Seymour's from that perspective, because he understands the police. And when he says, when I've been talking to people on the front line, in terms of police officers, that really resonates with a whole bunch of New Zealanders.
We have had a police shooting over the weekend. It makes 50 since 1990. So in a decade between 2009 and 2019, 16 people were killed by police. 50% of those were Māori, 40% were from Taranaki. They were all investigated by the Police Complaints Authority, and they all were deemed justified. I guess, do we have the right framework, do you think, in terms of police investigating themselves?
On the incident that happened on the weekend, I want to say this. I am aghast that the media, and it's been a full-on police media communications since that poor guy got shot. It's had his story. It's had how bad he was, how this, that, and the other thing. So let me just say that I'm appalled at the behaviour, like as if they're putting him on trial in the first 2 or 3 days. You should learn to be quiet, shut up, and don't say anything. My view is
we will steer clear of that case because it's under investigation.
Yeah, absolutely.
But your thoughts?
And I wish the other media had have taken that advice. Here's the thing on an independent complaints authority. I think it should be independent. I think you should have your own budget. I think you should have your own investigators, whether they be lawyers, former police officers, whatever. But it needs to be at arm's length, even at a body's length from the police themselves, and it hasn't been. And there's so many things that are wrong with the system that we have.
And remember,
it's called the Independent Police Authority, so it's meant to be all those things.
Well, it's meant to be, but actually resources in terms of police, in terms of who will investigate the day-to-day movement of the police officers involved is questionable. And remember, they just had to change their methodologies. Only over the last 2 weeks, there was a recent case, and this is just a simple fact, where the police got access to the tapes before the interviews. Why? Got to get your story straight.
That's not independent.
No,
that's a stitcher.
Allegedly.
Well, no. That actually happened where the police were given access to the videotapes before the interview with the independent commission was held, and they've changed that.
I'm going to say allegedly until I can just check those details there, because I just want to cover us. But let's move on. Thank you for those whakaaro. We were talking about Louisa Wall 2 weeks ago. And she's still, Louisa Wall, she's still in the media. She hasn't left quietly, has she, Tau?
No, she hasn't. And you will always find that if there's an MP with an issue, whether they feel that they've been
Taki
wrong.
or a mamai.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And those mamais they last for a long time. It doesn't matter how big they are, but they will use the opportunity of a valedictory and a leaving of Parliament as an opportunity to twist the knife. But let me say, that's it. You don't get another opportunity. Honestly, you do not get a second bite at the cherry. She's getting a good job. She's been made an ambassador of some sort. So I'm not sure, and I don't want to belittle the role, but she's got a job out of it, which pays 180, 190k a year. I would have said she should have been happy.
She'll work hard though. She's got a good reputation.
She will work hard. At whatever that job is, she will give 150%. And I really do think that, I really do hope that her legacy isn't lost in this mire, because her legacy was that she changed the law on marriage equality. No one else. We helped. We were bit players, but she got it across the line.
When you leave like that, does it hurt that individual, or will it have an effect on the government?
Oh, well, look, I think it will leave the Prime Minister bruised. And I think even some of the colleagues that are around her and support her, like Minister Mahuta, would have probably been a little bit disturbed about the language of it, because they still have to stick around, and she called their Prime Minister, their President participating in a corrupt practice under parliamentary privilege at that. So there's some internal sort of fires and external fires that they'll have to put out. But still got 13, 14 months for the election. And Tau is absolutely right. She's going to a role that basically was fundamentally made up, didn't exist, paid $180,000. So for her to say the Labour Party hasn't looked after her when they've gone out of the way to look after her is a little bit rich in my books.
It will, it will tarnish a wee bit of the Labour Party, I guess, wouldn't you thought?
Oh, well, I would think so. But here's the other thing, because I was a member up to about 8 years ago for 30 odd years. I know how these things work. If you've got the support of your local committee, you will get reselected, whether head office wants you or not, because you get the votes. And here's the thing. There was a disconnect between Louisa and her LEC. The membership, when she first became the Member of Parliament for Manierewa, one of the strongest seats in the country, was around 600. After 3 years, they lost about 500 members, and they had 100 members in a seat like Manierewa.
We're going to move to international news now. Hene Henare Nanaya Mahuta, they've been in the spotlight of the government's response to Ukraine, including the decision to provide lethal aid. What are your thoughts, Tau? You've been in government. How difficult is it to juggle, what's happening in the world and the support? Yeah,
it is. I mean, given there's our country is only 5 million people. We haven't got a mega budget where we can give billions of dollars in military aid. We have to have a look at the toy shops and look for the cap guns, and that's because that's actually an honest breakdown of what New Zealand can give, short of sending, and they sent 50 odd experts. I don't know what they're going to do. Maybe they'll be into the spying game and the backroom stuff. They've sent a Hercules up there. I just think that here's the thing about the Ukraine. Is white people shooting white people up in Europe again. And they want us to help you again. What about the likes of Palestine, who continually have their land and their people killed and stolen from them on a daily basis? And we say nothing. We don't say anything. That worries me. And on the same hand, they want us to help the Ukraine. I say help both of them.
Human rights. Your thoughts on
this?
No,
I agree with Tau. I think the moral imperative is to move. That's a heck of a movement to provide lethal aid, and I'm really interested to see how Russia reacts to that. But here's the other thing: the henchmen, the henchman's representative is still in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and that's the ambassador. And if you're going to provide lethal aid, you ought to expel the ambassador. So I think there are other mechanisms that can be put in place, but there is a lot of hypocrisy. As To points out. You know, we see what's going on in Ukraine, but we look at the Palestine, we look at Yemen, we look at other hotspots in the world where basically other forms of imperialism have not been brought to order.
Why did we provide lethal aid?
I just think that the pressure was on. Australia was following. We're part of they're part of our defence mechanism. And here's the other thing, the troops, our troops, the people who fly aeroplanes and like that, they can't just train. They need to do things.
Yeah, mate.
So it fulfills all of our internal needs also.
Here's the really interesting thing is that Moriopol, where people are dying in their hundreds and thousands in that part of the country, there's a battalion, there's a brigade. I think it's called the Azov Brigade, Ukrainian, ultra right-wing, ultra racist, and they are the. And I heard Radio New Zealand say a reporter say that these people are the last bastion of that port city. They are going to fight to the death. Just put that in the back of your mind.
Yeah.
These are ultra right, ultra
nationalists,
ultra white, ultra right, racist organisations. This brigade, they are the white person's Al Qaeda. Honestly, it's wrong for Russia to invade. Let's get that out of the way. But boy, there's some weird stuff going on in Europe at the moment.
Moving back home to co-governance, Leader of the Opposition Chris Luxon, he says the government and the Prime Minister needs to lead, explain what co-governance is. He says that Māori might understand what it means, but, the rest of New Zealand doesn't. Does he have a point? Should we be having these kind of really big discussions about co-governance?
Well, I think we do need to have the discussion, but he knows what it means. Have a look at the statute. Have a look at the Te Uruwera. Have a look at Waikato River. Have a look at the other issues of co-governance that have been existing and by and large has been working. Why don't they have a debate about it? I don't think he's a good faith actor in this area. I think it's just about political point scoring.
Regardless of that, though, what about, the everyday New Zealanders, people from Aotearoa who might vote either way next time? Shouldn't they know what it is? Shouldn't we say, okay, what does it look like in health? What does it look like in education?
Yes, and I think that I understand that the rollout is about to happen in relation with that, but we haven't had any clear explanations from the sort of government's perspective on how they see it. And with co-governance, those mechanisms change all the time. And although we've had the Tuhoi settlement, although we've got the Waikato River, things change. And I don't think we've had enough discussion and debate in terms of that new dynamic.
Should we start something new and actually have big programs on it where we can get people involved?
The problem with leaving it up to the public to decide what it is is that there will be 150,000 different views, examples of what co-governance is. And it's all right that we can say that Tuhoi and the Waikato River, but this is not about those things. This is about a health, a Ministry of Health, a program to fix up our health. We have one chance. We've got one chance left. This is not about, it's actually not about Māori and Pākehā. This is about actually trying to do something about the poorest statistics that we've ever seen.
Ka pai.
And this is our only chance.
We're nearly at the end, but I just want to quickly raise something. Anzac Day coming up, and we've had 650 Māori Battalion medals have been pulled out of the vault by lawyer David Stone, and there's a list online that you can go through and find if your uncle, some of your tupuna in there. Neat for 2022?
Yeah.
But probably a bit late.
Oh, no, but sometimes justice takes a little while to get there, and there will be whānau members, moku puna, that look back at their tupuna, hold that medal with honour and pride. So I'm pleased they're doing it, and big ups to the lawyer who done this.
Big ups to David for doing that.
What do they think they were doing with them?
They were dead.
Yeah, well,
They're
a large
all dead.
percentage of them are, but I mean...
And there's I think there might be only one or two of the battalion that are alive. How shameful is that in a box in the Ministry of Defence there are all these medals that those guys deserved to have while they were alive.
I went down that list, and I reckon I could probably find 50, 60 of those whānau like today, because I know them. It's not as if they're unknown names.
Would you like to see it happen through all the services?
Yes, I would. Yes. I think somebody from the Ministry of Defence should stand up and say, right, well, actually, one of the people within the Ministry of Defence. We can bang on about the Minister of Defence, but at the end of the day, it's not his fault. It's the Ministry of Defence's fault.
So going through,
everybody.
You've got some ideas that it might be the same for the Air Force.
I think so. My father-in-law's medals are most probably somewhere in the back room of the Ministry of Defence, and there's a whole lot of us.
And what would that mean for Mrs. X?
That'd be cool for Mrs. X. You know, she could maybe wander up the road on Anzac Day with the medals on her chest, or her kids, my kids. His mores. Yeah. That would be cool.
And once they get it, it's a retelling of their koro story, and on that basis alone, it's good enough for me.
Because none of them ever met him, because he was dead before I came along. So I missed out on meeting my
What was his name?
John Brown.
John Brown.
He served as an aircraft engineer. He was over in the Suez when the Suez crisis happened. Yes. He was also in Uganda. Get this. As a commemoration for the new Queen back in 1952.
So you'll be remembering him on Anzac Day?
I do every...
Who will you be remembering this Anzac Day?
Well, many of our whānau, because we were farmers, didn't go off to war, but certainly we have many whānau member that went to Malaya and to Vietnam. And you know what? When I was being brought up, our teachers were all Second World War folks. Now all we've got to hold on is Malaya, Vietnam, and some of the later battles.
Yeah. Well, tēnā kōrua, thank you for that. That's Party People for this week. E hoa mā. Don't forget you can watch us on RNZ's YouTube account or listen via Apple Podcasts and the RNZ page. Ka nui te mihi ki te Puna Whakatongarewa, mōna I tautoko I tēnei kaupapa, kāti kei aku whakatamarahi ki te rangi, kei aku whakaāio ki te whenua, ko pai a tātou mahi ki Utua mo tēnei rangi. Kia riri anō ngā mihi mati here ki ngā kaupapa katoa, ko hora I te pai o Party People no hura mai rā.